The Justice League. They're some of the most powerful and well-known heroes in their respective universe, who stand for justice and the good of all. But what if they were replaced by people who weren't so good? We opened up the story seeing Lex Luthor on a helicopter trying to close the deal by threatening and extorting this man, and as he is almost successful, handing over the signing papers to own his company, a huge EMP wave goes off, shutting not only their helicopter down but the entire city going dark, sending their aircraft plummeting to the ground. And as it swerves to hit the side of a building, blowing up, we see Lex Luthor crawling out, injured and barely surviving. And as he looks around, he sees all technology, all screens, saying 4 simple words: this world is ours. As we see Grid, who is the culprit in sending these EMP waves shutting down certain places. Metropolis, and then he says Gotham is next to go offline. As you see on his display, Supermax prisons being targeted. And unfortunately for Nightwing, we saw that Arkham Asylum was one of the places targeted. As you see Nightwing himself bringing in a criminal to take to Arkham. And just as he gets there, the EMP hits there as well, cutting his signal. But just then, a target whooshes by, going straight towards the asylum. So Nightwing, being the hero he is, steps forward to see what all this is about. And as he sees this mysterious figure rip open the doors barehanded, throwing them aside, he goes to charge in. He's gonna see what he can do. But before he can take another step farther, he's hit by something from behind and knocked off balance. And as he's barely able to get a look at the culprit, he questions Batman, with them saying no one hitting him again, before the other person takes a lasso around his neck, carrying him off. We cut over to Lex Luthor, who's getting up after his helicopter crash, and as he's disoriented, he gets up looking around when suddenly he hears a boom and turns around and sees what he thinks is Superman flying straight towards him. And as he narrowly moves out the way, we then see that Superman-like figure rip open some LexCorp vault doors, saying where is it, using his X-ray vision before finding what he's looking for, plunging his hand through a wall and picking out a piece of kryptonite. He then crushes it between his hands and heats it up using his laser vision, snorting the fumes, all while Lex Luthor watches in awe, before he screams out yes, saying how he's the strongest again, as it pans over and shows the giant U on his chest instead of the iconic shield, before flying off at top speed, telling Grid to track down the rest of the kryptonite locations and tell no one else. We then suddenly move over to Central City as you see a bunch of the Flash villains, Captain Cold, Mirror Master, etc., trapped behind an electrified gate. And as they start to use their abilities to break free, suddenly a streak of lightning whooshes by, with them questioning, who was that? Is that the Flash? And as you see this Flash-like character tearing open Ironhide's prison and killing the guard there, reducing him to nothing but ash and bones. Then again we move over to Gotham City, back to Arkham Asylum, where we see Batman's rogue gallery, all gathered together, escaping after being given Silverlight coins that also double as a communication device, the only working communicator after Grid EMP'd every major city, and with Ivy saying who cares who they are, we should all just go our separate ways once we have the chance. Whoever's pitting this secret society or whatever together, Batman and the Justice League will stop them, and Scarecrow replying, oh no they won't. Right now we just need to listen and go where they're asking us to. And with the rest of them agreeing, off they go, where we see a bunch of DC's powerful and well-known villains all gathered together around the remains of the Justice League Watchtower, crash down into the earth. We even see some real heavy hitters like Black Adam and Amazo among the mix. But as the villains are there, they do what villains do and start bickering and fighting amongst themselves. And before a giant fight can break out, suddenly some of the Justice League's weapons and memorabilia drops from the sky, including Aquaman's trident, Wonder Woman's lasso, and even Superman's cape. And as the villains go fighting and scourging for these items, there's then a booming voice saying there will be no discord among us. This world is ours, and the Justice League is dead, before panning over and showing the crime syndicate in full glory, standing over all of these present villains. And then they start to introduce themselves, as they are broadcasted live across the world. Owlman, Superwoman, Power Ring, Deathstorm, Johnny Quick, and Atomica. They then go on to explain that they're from another world, a world in which they ruled with an iron fist, until that said world turned against them, so they destroyed it, and then searched for another world to conquer, ending up in this one, and saying how they apparently killed those who stood against them when they arrived, saying that they have killed the Justice League. But this isn't enough to convince everybody, as even some of the own villains call them out on this, saying, are you blind? Look at him, he looks exactly like Superman, except he's got a stupid U on his chest. And unfortunately for him, that was the last words, as he is then atomized by Ultraman's heat vision, saying that this is their world now, and if they ally with them, it can be theirs too. And those who question and fight against them will face the consequences. As then we see the other heroes of the world, gearing up ready to mount a counterattack to really see what's going on. But the crime syndicate came prepared, as Ultraman tells Superwoman to bring him out, in which she brings out the incapacitated Nightwing, who is not only beat up, tied up, but barely alive. And as I hold him up for not only the supervillains, but the entire world to see, she then suddenly takes his mask off, revealing his identity, Richard Grayson, for the entire world to see, with them saying Grayson has many friends and many places he calls home, and how they will hunt down and destroy everyone and everything he ever cared about, all who would oppose them, saying if you fight against us, not only will you lose your lives, but the lives of those you cherish. Your family, friends, and neighbors will die while you watch, sending a threatening message to the masses to not rise up against them, but to the villains and allies to their new secret society, their army, basically telling them that no more will they be held down by the weak, that the strong will rule, and that they are free to do whatever they please. We then cut over to seeing villains all over the globe attacking and causing a ruckus, attacking and destroying cities, doing whatever they please without a care in the world, or heroes to oppose and stop them. Cutting back over to this new crime syndicate. As the sun starts to rise, we see that apparently it hurts Ultraman, the opposite of Superman, with him saying the sun, I'd almost forgotten how it stings, and him rocketing off, flying into the sky. Cutting back over to Lex Luthor's point of view, we see him kneeling out the side of his building, looking over it and trying to process all of his new information, with the Justice League being gone and the villains starting to rule and cause chaos, when he looks up and suddenly sees the moon itself being placed over the sun like an eclipse. And with him looking closer, you can see Ultraman himself is pushing the moon in front of the sun, blocking out all sunlight, and with Lex Luthor finally coming to his senses, saying this is a job for Superman. Lex decides it's time to take action and to take the world back, so he immediately goes down to one of the top secret levels of LexCorp, where he unexpectedly meets Otis, previously one of his security guards, with him saying the lights aren't working, no AC either, there's no power to anything except these screens, which he then shows a phone screen that simply says, this world is ours. He then accompanies Lex further into the facility, where they then approach a frozen test tube, which reads, Subject B0. And with Lex going up and wiping the face of it, revealing a humanoid creature or figure, but saying it's not ready. And then following up with 5 years. It needs another 5 years. And with Otis, now rightfully freaked out, starts asking, what is that in there, Mr. Luthor? And with Lex promptly explaining, when I began this process, I knew it would take a decade to properly clone a being from the single cell of Kryptonian blood I collected. But with the power out, the solar panels are dark, and the protein fluids are already breaking down. It'll die anyway. It's only been 5 years, but I have no other choice. Before he presses a button and unlocks it, revealing what seems to be a half-baked humanoid creature. And as it steps out, it does nothing but simply growl. And with Otis immediately drawing his firearm, saying it's a monster. But Lex Luthor, as calm as ever, simply says, Creature, can you understand me? I am Lex Luthor. I am your creator and programmer, and you will listen to every word and carry out every command I utter. So let's test this out. Kill him, as he points to a confused Otis. But the creature simply just stands there and growls. So Lex Luthor repeats himself, saying kill him. And this time the creature simply tilts his head in confusion. And Otis, being nervous, fires around at the creature's chest, achieving nothing as a bullet bounces off. But Lex Luthor, now angry, yells, listen to me, kill that man right now. But unfortunately, Otis makes the fatal mistake of drawing his weapon at Luthor, saying screw you. And at that point, something clicked inside of the creature's head, as it then lunges for Otis, grabbing him by the throat and squeezing, all while Lex watches. And as it's done, Luthor does nothing but smirk and says yes, that'll do, as he grabs a Superman shirt from a cabinet and walks off with him. We then pick up with a crime syndicate, who, after destroying not only the Watchtower, but every major Supermax prison, freeing villains, they are now in said Watchtower, plotting their next move. But some of the members aren't too happy with just sitting around and want in on the action, such as Johnny Quake and Atomica, and so because of this, they take off, leaving the rest of the team, with Ultraman now taking the time to go check on their prisoner, Nightwing. And after confirming that he's still tied up and drugged, he leaves, as Grid told him there was conflict in Kahndaq. And so with Ultraman gone, Superwoman pulls Owlman aside, revealing that she's pregnant with his child. Moving over to the superheroes, we see the Teen Titans gearing up, as not only with the chaos and conflict going around, but with the Justice League themselves being reported dead, they can't just sit around and do nothing. So they plan to go to the Watchtower to confront the crime syndicate and rescue Nightwing. But as Superboy points out, what hope does the Teen Titans have where the Justice League failed? And with Robin replying, we can only fight until our dying breath. And plus, if the whole world knows who Richard Grayson is, Nightwing, it's only a matter of time until someone figures the rest of us out. So they set off, making their way there. But as we can see, apparently the local police and military are already fortified at the watchtower, getting ready to do what they can, with apparently the chief of this operation saying turn off the lights, we don't want them to see us coming, before immediately getting red misted, A-Train style, by Johnny Quick, leaving nothing but red mist and gun parts. And as Johnny Quick super sped in, he unloaded and grabbed a bunch of people's bullets, throwing them back at super speed, which would have been deadly if not for the Teen Titans intervention, with Superboy melting them with his heat vision, in which we see the next panel, which if you ask me is a pretty insane thing to say. And then the fight is on, as we see Johnny Quick quickly creating a tornado, throwing everybody off their feet, and with Atomica jumping down one of the Teen Titans' throat, choking her. But as this is happening, we see Johnny Quick grab Kid Flash, who is Bart Allen from the future. And even Johnny notices this, with him saying, your vibrational frequency is way off. When are you even from, kid? Cause it isn't now. How about we play a little tug of war between centuries, huh? As he grabs Kid Flash by the throat, using his connection to the Speed Force to tug him back, opening a literal Speed Force time vortex, sucking not only Kid Flash in, but the rest of the Teen Titans surrounding him, prematurely ending the fight, with the duo, Johnny Quick and Atomica, unfortunately standing victorious, afterwards racing off to quote-unquote find some more good guys. Now back with Lex Luthor, we see him finally putting on the iconic power armor, which at this point in time was just a prototype, not fully ready, but given the situation, he has no choice. And as he suits up, the clone creature also suits up, but putting the Superman logo on backwards. But after gearing up, Lex simply says, Metropolis is in ruin, the Justice League is dead, Superman is gone. This is a job for Lex Luthor. Which this right here is one of the hardest panels throughout this whole comic, as we see Lex and the clone Kryptonian setting off, try and save what they can. Meanwhile, at Star Labs in Detroit, we see two scientists barricading themselves in, as this is apparently the Red Room, which contains some of the most dangerous technology on Earth, and it's only a matter of time till the crime syndicate comes looking, with one of these scientists being none other than Dr. Stone, Cyborg's father. But just then, something starts banging on the door, breaking it in, and with the scientists preparing for the worst, they aim their super weapon at the door and say their goodbyes to each other. But just then, as the door gets blasted down, we see is none other than Batman, Catwoman, and Cyborg, all who have seen better days. But with Cyborg being the worst of them, as they walk in and pit Cyborg on the table, one of the scientists says, "You're alive, Batman, but where's the rest of the Justice League?" And with Batman looking down saying they didn't make it. The story picks back up at Star Labs, where we see Cyborg on an operating table surrounded by his father, Batman, and Catwoman, who are trying to assess his damages and also the threat that the crime syndicate are causing on this new Earth. And as they are talking, they overhear the news where Batman hears Nightwing has been captured and his identity is revealed as Richard Grayson, which sends Batman into a panic mode, pitting everything else aside and planning to rescue him as fast as he can, with him telling Catwoman, "I need to find Nightwing," and with Catwoman saying after they broadcast his identity, this Grayson person is probably already dead, but Batman is simply saying, "We don't know that," and with Catwoman being confused saying, "Who is he?" and Batman saying nothing more than he's a friend. We then see Lex Luthor and his Bizarro clone of Superman salvaging what tech they can, a satellite and homing beacon, it seems, where Lex taps into it and sees a fight going on between Ultraman and Black Adam, who as it seems are evenly matched. And the fight began because Ultraman wanted complete control over Earth, which includes Kahndaq, who Black Adam is a protector over. So with this, Black Adam uses his trump card, striking Ultraman in the back, seemingly with no effect, with Ultraman saying, "You're trying to hurt me with words? No more words from you," before grabbing him by the mouth and cracking his jaw, sending him sinking into the water. But as the battle is over, Ultraman is surprised to see he is hurt, as blood runs down his nose, before he flies off to find Metallo, as Ultraman is like Superman, except sunlight hurts him and he powers up through kryptonite. And Lex even makes a comment about this, saying he's avoiding flying in direct sunlight. And seeing another potential ally in Black Adam, he tells Bizarro to churn the waters. So Bizarro, using his heat breath, starts boiling the ocean. But we then see a figure emerge from it, and it's none other than Black Manta, carrying Black Adam's body. And then out of nowhere from the warehouse near them, we see Captain Cold come out, saying, "I refuse to join the Syndicate's society." And with this, we see a new team forming, one full of villains, with Lex as their leader, to try and save the world from this crime syndicate. Shifting back over to Batman and Catwoman, we see her blindfolded. And as Batman takes off her blindfold, he says, "I'm taking you somewhere few people have been, Catwoman. The less you know about its exact location, the better. There are secrets about me you're safer not knowing." Before she opens her eyes and sees the Batcave in all of its full glory, and with them here to try and recoup and regather themselves with more weaponry and tech that can aid them. But as they keep on going through the cave, Batman shows Catwoman his infamous contingency plan, where he keeps weaknesses and ways to defeat varying League members, even ones he considers friends and allies. A small kryptonite ring for Superman, a Sinestro Corpse Yellow Lantern ring for Green Lantern, a lightning rod from the future for the Flash, a mother box for Cyborg. He doesn't bother opening the Aquaman case, and the Wonder Woman's is literally empty. But as this is going on and Batman parades through the Batcave, we see Grid slowly keeping a track on them and watching his every move. Moving back over to this newly formed team, we see Lex Luthor trying to resuscitate Black Adam and wake him up, and Lex talking over to them. Even though these new villains seem unstoppable, he's battled enough heroes and villains alike to know even the strongest among them have weaknesses they can exploit. So then they set off to find said weaknesses and what they can use to turn the tide. We then see them in the sewers, and as they make their way through, they get to their destination, which is right under Wayne Enterprises, as they plan to break in to gather whatever tech they can to aid themselves. And as Bizarro and Black Adam break through the floor and the rest of the team climbs up, they see none other than Batman and Catwoman having the same idea as them to gather tech to aid them, and with Batman and Lex simply just acknowledging each other before Batman instinctively throws smoke bombs to clear the area. But he had a device in his hand which seemed to be a mother box, which they were at Wayne Tech to try to figure out how to turn it on, as the mother box will allow them to teleport anywhere anytime. And as the new supervillain team is rightfully confused, thinking the entire Justice League was dead, suddenly there's an explosion of a green light, and we see Power Ring, one of the members of the crime syndicate with various villains behind them, as he has tracked them down and ready to take them in or kill them. And as a three-way battle starts with 3 different teams, we see Power Man, the first one to make a move towards Batman, saying, "What? He's alive? Quick, kill him." And with Catwoman panic, saying, "What do we do?" Batman simply says, "We fight fire with fire," before putting on a strange ring, telling the green villain, "Beware your power, time to beware mine," before we see Batman transformed with a temporary power-up into a yellow lantern, which is a sick design, before firing a yellow construct. But Power Ring returns in tandem, firing snakes. And unfortunately for Batman, the yellow lantern ring approaches 0% in power before one of the snakes grabs the ring off Batman's finger, giving it back to Power Ring as he crushes it, ending this temporary power-up. Before suddenly another explosion goes off, this time in yellow light, before we see Sinestro himself appear, seemingly called and averted his attention to the activation of a yellow ring. And as Power Ring was the one to actually destroy the yellow ring, he is Sinestro's first target. As we then see Power Ring running scared through the sewers, trying to escape and evade Sinestro, but it's futile as Sinestro just immediately catches up. And as he makes a bull-like construct, Power Ring has finally had enough and decides to actually fight back instead of being scared. But unfortunately for him, sees he is outmatched, as Sinestro gets him in a chokehold, saying, "Enough of this, enough of you," as he literally severs his arm using a blade he created, causing the ring to detach from the host's finger to scan and search for a new viable host. And as Power Ring lays there bleeding out, in his final words, all he says is, "The ring, it's finally gone. Thank you," as he looks at Sinestro, and Sinestro saying nothing more than "You're welcome," as he uses his yellow ring to finish him off and turn him into bone and ash. We see how the other members fare in fights, with Batman, who is really on a team of his own, fighting against everyone there with Catwoman. And when through the chaos, Batman stops to talk to Luthor for a second, saying, "Friends of yours, Luthor?" With him responding, "No." "Why don't I believe you?" Batman says. "I wouldn't expect you to," before Luthor puts his hands up, seemingly about to blast Batman. But as it turns out, a villain was about to jump on Batman, Copperhead, but Lex saved him. And with him even saying, "Though you do realize, Batman, I just saved your life." And with Batman begrudgingly responding, "Don't flatter yourself." And as Batman starts to take on Copperhead hand to hand, Lex says, "Get clear so I can get another shot." But with Batman simply saying, "Don't try and earn favor, Luthor. As soon as I'm through with them, I'll be setting my sights on you." Before Luthor just says, "You'll have to get in line then, Batman." As we see Deathstroke point his gun straight at Luthor's unprotected head. And with Deathstroke rightly bringing up, saying, you spend billions on this suit of armor, but you leave out the helmet. I'm guessing because you can't stand the thought of people not knowing it's you. Which I know in some iterations, Luthor has force fields around his suit of armor, but in some iterations, it's literally just a suit without a helmet, which you would think for a billionaire genius with normal enemies and as a supervillain, he would be more protective. But anyways, Luthor himself then brings up a good point, saying, if you kill me, Deathstroke, then nothing stops the Syndicate. And since Deathstroke is a mercenary or an assassin, he really has loyalty to no one but the money. So if one time Luthor himself could hire Deathstroke, boom, he's loyal to Luthor. But if someone can outbid him or pay him more, he would snap and turn on Luthor in a heartbeat. But then Lex continues, saying, what do you think is going to happen if these super doppelgangers actually take over our world, Slade? There will be no need for mercenaries on a planet full of them. The hunt will be over. And I know as well as you're nothing without the hunt. The Syndicate is bad for business, mine and yours. Which actually causes Deathstroke to stop and think for a second. And as this conversation is going on, Copperhead and Batman are still fighting, with Copperhead seemingly having that upper hand, with him wrapped around Batman, with him saying, blow Luthor's brains out already. I'll swallow what's left as soon as I deal with Batman. But as he looks over to Slade, he sees Slade slowly point his gun, saying, change of plans, Snake Man, before firing around, killing the villain, much to Batman's disappointment. And afterwards, Deathstroke says to Luthor, you're going to write me a big fat check if we get through this, Luthor. But with the fight now done and all of the villains either secured or defeated, everyone left standing stops and talks for a second. Specifically, Luthor's team and Batman and Catwoman. With Luthor saying, before you pull out another battering Batman, consider this. There's no need for us to fight because we all want the same thing. We want the crime syndicate eradicated. But Batman disagrees with this, as Luthor's team wants them killed, but Batman, in his moral code, wants them taken in alive. And with Deathstroke butting in on the conversation, saying, you think we're playing by your rules, Batman? This isn't your game anymore, it's ours, and we don't take prisoners. But just then Sinestro comes back in from previously killing Power Ring, saying the Green Lantern Pretender is dead, and next time you attempt to activate one of my rings, please don't resist it. It leaves the ring and yourself vulnerable. He then goes on to further explain, if you allow yourself to fully embrace fear, you could have the power you desperately crave. Ironically, the same power you're afraid of having. What a wonderful Yellow Lantern you'd make. Before he is cut short by Luthor, saying how they can use Sinestro's help, saying Earth is under attack by a parallel universe. But Sinestro, being not only not human, but having no interest on Earth, there is nothing in it for him. And with Lex being the masterful manipulator he is, imagine what a lesson it would be once Green Lantern learned you did what he couldn't. Help me lead us to victory, Sinestro. Which brings him on board. But Batman then speaks up, as he obviously doesn't like these murderers and villains forming this team together, saying no, this is a search and rescue mission first, to find Richard Grayson, and only once Nightwing is safe, we will take down the Syndicate. But all of you are going to work within the perimeters I set and follow the orders I give. If we are working together, I am in charge. Which it seems Batman didn't read the room, as all the other villains just stare at him. As in this instant, Batman has no power here, as Deathstroke himself is usually a hard, tough fought battle, going usually 50-50, but add on Sinestro, Black Adam, Bizarro, and Lex Luthor, Batman is outgunned and outsmarted, with even Catwoman realizing this, saying, Batman, they're in charge. So while Batman and Lex's team sort out their problems, we see the crime syndicate sort out problems of their own, as Ultraman and Superwoman infiltrated the Batcave, as they were in search for the last piece of kryptonite on Earth, which was in the Batcave in the form of a kryptonite ring. And unfortunately for Ultraman, Batman took it. And how Owlman is there on his own accord, wanting more information of the Waynes of this universe, he informs them that Batman has it. To their surprise, as they thought Batman should be dead, which Owlman simply says Waynes do tend to survive. But just then they're interrupted by Grid, who informs them that Power Ring is dead. And while the exact reason is unimportant, the main concern is the ring. As it went off searching for a new host, it releases pulses of energy, ones that could even be sensed from across the multiverse. And because of it, something appeared on the coast of Maine just seconds ago. So Ultraman then calls an emergency meeting with the rest of the Syndicate. And as they all arrive on the coast of York, Maine, they look up in the sky, as they all start to talk and argue about what to do next and what's the game plan. I told you I was right, Deathstorm. I told all of you. The creatures that destroyed our world have found us here, as we see a giant red crack in the sky, which seems to be from whatever eldritch monster and horrors lie beyond the universal barriers. We see Batman being forced to work with Lex Luthor and his little team of criminals, as the crime syndicate has seemingly killed the Justice League and taken over this world, leaving only a select few heroes and more bad guys. And with it being their top priority to not only break into the Watchtower, as the crime syndicate infiltrated and took it over, but also to see if there's any source of where the normal Justice League has wind. And as they make their way down to the hall of the Watchtower, Sinestro uses his ring to scan for any anomalies. While looking like he's absolutely mogging the rest of the team, he picks up 6 anomalies with his ring, and only 2 located in the Watchtower. And with that, Batman, as always, starts to form a plan, saying there's a manual shutoff to the security systems I put in. I can program it to loop the video feeds for 1 minute before cutting the lines. And with Lex bringing up a good point, why would you design your own security system with a manual override, Batman? Unless, of course, you thought you might have to take on the Justice League yourself one day. And then Batman completely ignores him as he is right on the money. He continues to work, and eventually they get in. And as they are in, Batman seems to be going his own way, forcing the team to split up, with Lex telling Captain Cold and the rest to find more crime syndicate members and kill them. But as Batman, Lex, Catwoman, and Bizarro turn to Hall, they find Nightwing, but he is attached to a no-good machine called the Murder Machine. And you don't exactly have to be a genius to figure out what type of purpose this machine has. Moving over, we see Grid, the crime syndicate's version of Cyborg, and Alfred, who is really just Alfred but evil, finally figure out that the cameras have been sabotaged and that they've been infiltrated. So because of this, Alfred goes to check on a very important prisoner they have on board, and as he's making sure he's secured, he gets blindsided and grabbed by Black Manta. And what unfolds even catches Captain Cold, a hardened criminal, off guard, as Black Manta literally brutalizes Alfred while saying they all die. And with Captain Cold still taken aback a little bit, saying yeah they will, but what about this one? Is he one of them? Before pointing at the prisoner, which will become super important later. But moving back over to Batman, Nightwing, and Lex Luthor, Nightwing is seemingly okay, or at least alive, which is the most important thing for Batman. As Batman goes up and apologizes to Nightwing for not being there when you needed him to, suddenly the door slams shut and they are locked in there, as a 5-minute timer starts to count down. And even if this wasn't called the Murder Machine, this situation wouldn't be good regardless. And with Lex Luthor saying, this isn't just a fancy pair of handcuffs, it's a bomb. And with Batman knowing this, his first choice is to try and get Nightwing out of there and disarm it, whereas Lex Luthor and Bizarro try to break down the doors, but to no avail, as Batman reveals this room was meant to hold Doomsday. So they're left with really one option. Well, 2, do nothing and die, or try to disarm the bomb. But unfortunately, as Nightwing points out, the bomb, it only disarms if his heart rate stops, as the detonator is literally hooked into his chest, meaning they either have to kill Nightwing or everyone dies, creating the ultimate dilemma for Batman: take one life to save the lives of not only himself, but others. And with Nightwing himself even saying they still have time, they need to just leave him and try to find a way to get out of here. But Batman, feeling absolutely guilty from leaving Nightwing and allowing him to get in this situation in the first place, saying, no, I am not leaving you. I'm not abandoning you again. The only way we're getting out of here is together. But unfortunately, the wires, every time Batman tries to cut one, it fixes itself. All while the timer beeps down slowly from 5 minutes to now 3. And remember before how I said this is a dilemma for Batman? Well, it's absolutely not one for Lex Luthor, as Lex Luthor would be comfortable sacrificing hundreds, if not thousands of people's lives if it meant saving his own. But just then, Lex then shoots Batman in the back, much to Catwoman's disapproval, but she is easily stopped by Bizarro. I'm making an executive decision. I'm saving our lives by ending his. I'm sorry, Grayson, as he seems to put his hand over his mouth, looking like he might break his neck. And as Batman recovers, he and Catwoman starts to fight Bizarro. And with Batman needing to even the odds, he puts on a kryptonite ring. And because Bizarro is a clone of Kryptonian DNA, the kryptonite ring is obviously very effective. And with Batman punching Bizarro, saying, Luthor, you hurt him and I will kill you. Which, regardless of the situation, do you know how badly you have to mess up for Batman, the guy notoriously famous for having a no-kill rule, to even threaten to kill you? Now, even if he doesn't, and he's not actually going to kill you, Batman's never typically the guy to even threaten to kill someone, let alone probably be serious in this case. But picking back up with Black Manta and Captain Cold, we see them unmask the person in the chair, who is bound up, but seems like a normal person. And with them removing the rope, and most importantly, the duct tape, the greatest thing holding this person back, but before anything can come of it, they get blitzed by Johnny Quick and Atomica, with Johnny saying, boys, do not touch. And as Atomica goes for Black Manta trying to get away into his suit, Johnny Quick has Captain Cold pinned against the wall, saying, I killed you on my Earth too. He didn't have this stupid freeze gun though. It's not a freeze gun, it's a cold gun. You see, lots of guys shoot ice, but I don't. I literally stop movement altogether. I stop atoms cold. I'm the man who mastered absolute zero. So even though he's a lot more powerful than a guy that can just freeze things, realistically the Flash should still never even get hit by something like this, let alone lose Captain Cold. But he is one of his rogues for a reason. And as Johnny Quick pointing out, as he has the gun in his hands, it doesn't matter if you can stop things absolutely if you don't have your finger on the trigger. But Captain Cold is a smart man, as he has voice control on it. And the phrase that activated is "Jingle bells, Batman smells," as it then shoots Johnny Quick in the leg, for Captain Cold literally shattering it, making it so Johnny Quick can never run the same again. Now the next part of this comic happens side by side and parallels the end reveal, as you see Atomica yelling in distress saying, "Are you insane? You took the tape off of him? Quick, put it back on, shut him up." As we see the mysterious individual say, "Look at your precious speed demon, he'll never run again," before shouting a word that really I don't even want to try to pronounce, and a giant lightning bolt comes down from the sky, striking him. And while this is going on, Luthor still has his hand on Nightwing's mouth, saying, "It's the only way to save us, Batman." And as a heart monitor seemingly flatlines, Batman then is able to get to Luthor, jumping him. But unfortunately, it seems Batman is too late, as Nightwing hangs his head down, looking like Luthor has actually got to him, with Batman beating Luthor senseless, saying, "You murderer," before he even has a chance to explain what he did. All the while, the mysterious individual catches up to Johnny Quick, who is still legless and crawling on the ground, saying, "You're not going anywhere," before grabbing him by the throat and actually snapping it, killing him instantly, and using some sort of electrical power and absorbing his, saying, "Your life is over, but your power is mine." And as Batman is still beating Luthor, Luthor tries to explain to him that he has the situation under control, that it's not too late to save Grayson, but Batman, in a fit of rage, isn't hearing him. But with the other person, it's revealed that he is Alexander Luthor from the parallel Earth, saying he's here and going to kill every single one of you. And Alexander Luthor shall be the most powerful hero your world has ever seen, showing him with the power of Shazam, plus now the power of Johnny Quick, a speedster, with some ability that allows him to take the powers of other people, and showing a parallel between one Luthor who seemingly took a life to save the rest of them, versus another Luthor who took a life to give himself more power. So we pick up with Ultraman himself looking on at the Watchtower and seeing the giant lightning bolt that just got called down, saying, "Those fools, they let him speak." As we cut over to see this mysterious man, who is revealed to be Alexander Luthor, the Lex Luthor of the alternate Earth. And it seems this Luthor prioritized power over intelligence and brains, as he found a way to steal powers from other heroes and villains, as he stole their universe's Shazam's powers, which is just Shazam backwards, Mazaz. So after saying Mazaz, he transforms, then kills Johnny Quick, stealing his speed. And I mean, for the main DC continuity Lex Luthor, I wonder why he doesn't do something similar. Maybe not the whole killing heroes and villains and stealing their powers part, but more of the enhancing your physical body to give you powers, or at least into super soldier tier. But maybe it's just his ego, saying if he's going to win and succeed, he's going to do it as a normal human and not some advanced juiced up superhuman. And after being freed and transforming, he looks around and sees Captain Cold and Black Manta, two people without powers to directly steal, so he says they're useless to him and flies off. Cutting over, we see Ultraman and Deathstorm talking about how Luthor is free and how divided their team is. Power Ring is dead, Grid is offline and not responding, Owlman is away doing who knows what, and Superwoman is missing. And of course Johnny Quick was killed, so these two talk about how to even stop Luthor. But in the middle of brainstorming, two people arrive in a flash of lightning. It is of course Alexander Luthor and Superwoman. And you might be saying, okay, why would she betray the crime syndicate? Well, it seems Alexander Luthor is the father of her unborn child, as Superwoman values strength above all else. And Ultraman, while strong and an alternate Superman, in the grand scheme of things, his power set is pretty weak and also pretty lame, as kryptonite is his sunlight. He gets powerful the more kryptonite he ingests, and sunlight weakens him. And of course, kryptonite has a limited supply, at least compared to the vast level of solar energy. And you can already tell where this will be heading as the two titans come head to head, with Ultraman saying, "I should have killed you, Luthor. I am stronger than you." But Luthor simply saying, "You were stronger than me, but that was before Johnny Quick, before Hawkwing, and before Batson," naming all of the heroes and villains he's killed and absorbed. And as Ultraman literally tries to crush his eyes, saying I'm still stronger, Luthor just calls upon the strength of those he's slain, and in almost a disrespectful fashion, one hit knocking out Ultraman against the side of a cliff, saying, take a nap and I'll be back for you once I absorb the power of your teammates. Basically treating Ultraman as a non-threat. And you know, if you can treat the most powerful person on the crime syndicate as they're not a threat at all, you are someone to be reckoned with. Which means for the heroes and villains, this is going to be no easy task to beat him. And while that crazy battle is going on, we move over to see what Batman and Lex Luthor are doing, with Batman literally choking him out in a pool of his own blood, as Batman thinks he murdered Nightwing. And as you know, Batman is usually willing to die behind his friends and teammates, but never usually push past the line to actually murder someone. As to his knowledge, Nightwing is not coming back, but Luthor still defends himself with his suit, letting off an electrical discharge, shocking Batman back. And with Batman momentarily stunned, he goes over to the Nightwing to reveal what happened. See, Nightwing is hooked up to something called a murder machine, which I'm pretty sure you can guess what it does by the name, but it is tied to his heart, so either the machine would have detonated or Nightwing dies. So instead of killing Nightwing, Luthor simply made him flatline after swallowing a specific pill. But he is going to stay dead if Luthor doesn't give him a adrenaline shot. And as he does, Nightwing's heart starts to beat again, even to Batman's surprise, as Luthor has outsmarted him. And of course, Nightwing and Batman goes into each other's embrace. Suddenly the door blasts open, in which it looks like Grid has appeared, one of the crime syndicate's members, but turns out it is Cyborg, who if you remember it was in pieces and utterly broken, but has been repaired and fixed. And as Cyborg slowly starts to give them the rundown, they decide to part ways, as Cyborg has found the Justice League trapped within Firestorm, which is a whole nother thing and we'll get to it later. But Batman and Catwoman decides to go with Cyborg, while Luthor and Bizarro decides to go help out the rest of the team. And as Luthor finally joins the rest of their little villain team, they look on and watch as Alexander Luthor beats into Ultraman. And as that fight is going on, they also look out and see Superwoman fighting Deathstorm. And as they start to battle, Superwoman gets her lasso around him. Now her lasso is different than say Wonder Woman's. Wonder Woman's is more the lasso of truth. Once it gets on you, you are forced to tell the truth. But this one is called the lasso of submission, meaning once you're touching it or it's around you, you are forced to listen and submit to the person, which arguably is even better than the lasso of truth, as why just have the person tell the truth? You could tell them to stop altogether. But Superwoman just utters a simple command: I want you to die for my lover, for Alexander, as the other Luthor comes up from behind him, crushing his head and absorbing his power. And because of the immense power within Deathstorm, he explodes, with Sinestro barely having enough time to put a shield around the villains, as Alexander Luthor claims another power set, growing even more powerful. Moving back over to Cyborg and Batman, as they try to rescue and free the Justice League, Cyborg gives him the rundown, saying he found out and crossed paths with Steve Trevor, and that he's been communicating with Martian Manhunter, who is trapped inside Firestorm with the rest of the League. And why is this all important, you might say? Because Martian Manhunter told Trevor that Firestorm's power could be broken by someone with an emotional tie to Wonder Woman using her magical lasso. But unfortunately, Trevor got captured by the Syndicate's secret society, meaning without him, they need somebody else with a strong connection to Wonder Woman so they could break Firestorm's unwilling hold on the League before he literally explodes and takes the entire eastern seaboard with him. And even Batman comments about this, saying Firestorm is glowing brighter and the air itself smells like it's burning, before Martian Manhunter mentally reaches out to Batman, saying if we don't unlock Firestorm now, he's going to detonate. And you know why you're the only one that can do this just as much as I do. As Batman agrees and tells Cyborg to give him the lasso. And with Cyborg being confused, it's revealed that Batman is closer to Wonder Woman than others might think, even with Catwoman questioning this too right beside him. Cutting over, we finally see Alexander Luthor confront the villain team, with Lex saying he hears Slade mumble some things before his helmet gets obliterated. I mean, are you kidding me? This looks way more than just obliterating his helmet. You can literally see the blood streaks from his face, almost looking like he caved his skull in. And even though it's not stated anywhere throughout the comic, he doesn't show up moving forward from this. So either he took the pain and got away, or he died from this. And after Deathstroke gets laid out for the count, the rest of the villains go up to try and stop him, with Black Manta being the next victim on his list. As Captain Cold then explains to Luthor, the Lex Luthor, what happened and who is this person. As he said a word, which is Shazam backwards, transformed, killed Johnny Quick, and then he was suddenly fast. And then Captain Cold gives him the final piece of information, that he said his name was Alexander Luthor, which if you didn't know, Alexander Luthor is the main Lex's real name, but he just goes by Lex for short. And as Lex Luthor finally puts two and two together, he doesn't even have enough time to do anything about it, as in a blur he blitzes forward, punching Luthor across the jaw. But just as it seems it is all over for Lex, Bizarro comes out of nowhere from behind, attacking Alexander, protecting and defending his creator. And as they start the battle, with Alexander immediately confused, saying, "What are you?" But as Bizarro gives it his best, it's unfortunate that his best just isn't enough, as Alexander simply punches him away, saying, "Whatever you are, you have power and I want it," before punching a hole straight through his chest, Homelander style, which in and of itself is no small feat, because here Bizarro is a Superman clone. So while his physicals, such as his strength, durability, speed, etc., aren't on the same level of Superman's or exceeding it, they are somewhat comparable. And clearly this wasn't enough, as Alexander still killed him very easily. And as Bizarro lays down in the field with his chest caved in, literally dying, Lex rushes over as Bizarro wheezes and takes his few last breaths in saying his goodbyes, telling Lex that he's sorry, which this does nothing but continue to anger Luthor, because even though it was just a creature or an experiment gone wrong, it was still his creature, his monster. And as always, Lex will have his last laugh and get his revenge, as even though Lex is technically a villain, he is the protagonist of this storyline. Moving over, we then see the Crime Syndicate, who is an alternate evil version of the Justice League, with Ultraman being the counterpart of Superman, their leader, as this Alexander Luthor plans to invade the mainline DC world to take it over and burn it to the ground. So the main Lex Luthor then brings together his team of supervillains, forming a plan to take down this crime syndicate once and for all. And as I said before, this Alexander Luthor has killed their Earth's version of Shazam and stole its powers. And Lex Luthor thinks that Black Adam can use his same magic lightning to transform Alexander Luthor back to base form. But there's one problem. Earlier before, Black Adam and Ultraman had a fight, in which Ultraman won and crushed Black Adam's jaw, meaning he cannot talk and summon the lightning correctly. But Sinestro is here and is going to use his ring to fix his jaw momentarily. And so Lex Luthor gives them a lightning rod so they can stab it into the Alexander Luthor and draw the lightning to him. And so with that, these two set off. And where is Batman and the other superheroes during all of this? Well, as I said before, the entire world thinks the Justice League is dead, killed by the crime syndicate themselves. And as we pick up with Batman and Cyborg in a secret room in the Watchtower, which the crime syndicate took over, we see them with Firestorm. And as it turns out, no, the crime syndicate obviously didn't kill the Justice League, but they did imprison them inside of the Firestorm's matrix. But unfortunately, there are too many minds and personalities inside of Firestorm, meaning if they don't do something quick, he's going to blow up and take everybody with him. So Batman comes up with a plan to use the Lasso of Truth, planning to use its connection to Wonder Woman, who is trapped inside of Firestorm along with the rest of the League, to free everybody and save the day. But a little more on that later, as you then move back over to see the massive fight going on outside, with Black Adam Sinestro trying to stop and stall Alexander Luthor. And at first his alternate Alexander pays no mind to Sinestro, because as a ring bearer or someone who uses a power ring, he has no real natural abilities to steal. But this is his downfall, as Sinestro uses this to stab him in the chest with the rod, which leaves him open for Black Adam to come from behind and eventually uses his trump card, yelling out Shazam, as a giant lightning bolt comes from the sky, striking this alternate Lex Luthor, with the evil Superwoman being caught in the blast as well. But as the dust and smoke clears, we see that the lightning literally has no effect, as Alexander Luthor literally says, "Your lightning, is that the best you can do?" as he laughs it off, before turning his attention to Lex Luthor, gunning straight for him and pummeling him into the ground. And Lex Luthor stands absolutely no chance against this alternate version of himself, with Alexander Luthor going on to say, "I knew who you are as soon as I looked into your eyes." And yes, Ultraman was right. This Earth is full of weaker versions of ourselves, as he holds him up by the neck, punching into him, saying that I am stronger than you, more powerful, I am better than you. And if any of you guys have seen The Boys, kind of reminds me of that one famous Homelander speech where he said about the same thing. With it looking like Lex Luthor has no chance to survive, and this may be his last moments, as he coughs up blood, but just then, he then begins to speak, saying, "Maybe you're right, maybe you are all those things, but I am still you. And I sound exactly like you," as he pushes and touches the lightning rod that is still jammed into his chest and says Shazam backwards, Mazaz, because on the alternate Earth, Earth 3, Billy Batson, instead of saying Shazam to transform, his transformation word is it backwards, and because Lex Luthor shares the same voice as Alexander Luthor, the magic works all the same, as the lightning bolt comes crashing down into the sky, into Alexander Luthor, and actually working this time, transforming him back into his base human state, as Lex now has the upper hand, using his suit, pulls out a blade and stabs him in the chest, almost instantly killing him on the spot, with him going on to say, "I may not be as strong or powerful as you, Alexander, but I am smarter," as he looks the dying man in his eyes, claiming his absolute superiority over him and victory. But of course, things are never easy, as this isn't over, because just then he is hit from behind by a tree, and it is none other than Ultraman himself, who of course, being an alternate version of Superman, still has an almost invincible level of power. But Ultraman doesn't know just how wrong he is, because for him he has two main weaknesses. Instead of getting stronger with sunlight like Superman would, he gets weaker. And instead of getting weaker within the radius of kryptonite, no, he needs to consume kryptonite to keep his abilities and to get stronger. And so because of this, over the last days, he used up all of the kryptonite sources on Earth, meaning right now he is progressively getting weaker and there's not much he can do about it. But at the very least, right now he plans to put Luthor down for good, as he lasers his weapons, getting ready to finally put his fist through his head and end this once and for all. But just then, we then see a bunch of really important things happen. First of all, a beam of sunlight comes through, burning Ultraman to the touch. As you see, Black Adam Sinestro literally pushed the moon out of the way of the sun, which it was put there previously by Ultraman himself to block it out and keep him empowered. Secondly, as I was saying before, Batman finally reaches through to Wonder Woman, freeing the entire Justice League from inside of Firestorm. And with the light of the sun, here come the heroes. As you see Ultraman on the floor, very quickly and progressively getting weaker, crawling for help, with Lex Luthor now on top. And Ultraman finally seeing that he is defeated and his whole plans are foiled, he tells Lex Luthor to just kill him, to get it over with, put him out of his misery. But Luthor takes pity and disgust on him, saying, "No, you are going to stay this way, Ultraman, knowing that you are the weakest man on the planet, in body and in mind." But moving over to the now freed Justice League, we see them in various stages of hurt or dismay, and Superman having the worst of it, as he has kryptonite poisoning and is literally dying from the inside out. Because as the Justice League goes on to say, before they were imprisoned, Atomica, basically an evil version of the Atom, shrunk down and put a sliver of kryptonite in his head. And if you're wondering what even happened to her, well, somewhere after the battle, Lex Luthor found her while she was in her smaller form and stepped on her, killing her. But I mean, nobody really cares about Atomica, so moving on. Meaning right now, if nobody can help him quick, Superman is going to straight up die. But just then, a voice rings out, saying "I can," and it is the least person you would expect to help Superman. It is Lex Luthor, coming in saying, "Yes, I can help Superman." As you then cut over to an undisclosed amount of time later, and we see an operating table with a tweezer with a little piece of kryptonite and blood dripping, with Superman coming up off of an operation table, holding his head and saying what happened, as he looks over and up and sees Lex Luthor, as Lex Luthor then goes on to say, "I just saved your life," something that Lex Luthor would probably never let Superman live down. That Lex Luthor, his greatest enemy and just a mere human, saved his life. Moving from this though, we then see the aftermath of everything. Initially starting with the supervillains, there is no question and doubt that these villains, murderers, and bad people helped save the Justice League and the entire world. But due to Lex Luthor's meddling, any charges against them went into question and eventually he got them cleaned. But of course, even if they didn't, some people on the team wouldn't care either way, as Sinestro, an alien from space, and Black Adam, the ruler of Kahndaq, just fly off laughing. Now switching over, two very important things of note happen here. First of all, we see Lex Luthor uncover a big secret. After searching through disappearances and things of that nature during this whole chaos, he finds out that Batman is Bruce Wayne. And secondly, Superman reveals why the crime syndicate even came to this reality in the first place. It was because theirs was destroyed, and in one of the last parts, if you remember, there was a giant red crack in the sky. Well, it seems like Superman thinks Darkseid destroyed the world and is now coming to this one. But in reality, what's really happening is it was the Anti-Monitor himself, who was going around destroying planets and even universes, gathering more power and getting stronger, getting ready to face Darkseid himself, meaning the Justice League is going to be caught in the crossfire. But for now, that is the end of this Forever Evil storyline and the end of this video. Now, if you enjoyed, leave a like or subscribe if you're new and enjoy this type of content and want to see more. Now, this was the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.